guys, welcome back to Embers and Ash. My name's Ashley, if you didn't know, and today I'm talking to you guys about my mindsets that have changed since having a child. Or I feel like I should specify my mindsets on children or on motherhood. Those thoughts that have changed. You definitely hear it a lot that you think you're gonna parent one way before you have a kid, and then you have the child and your perspective changes a little bit. So I want to share this to help people who are planning on having kids, expecting a kid, that kind of thing, to help with your expectations. But also these are just my thoughts and opinions on motherhood. That doesn't mean that this is like the only way to think about motherhood. So my first mindset that changed is how many kids I want to have. I mentioned this in last video, I think, all about how many kids you should have. I, before having kids, wanted like 4, and now I think I want 2. And you know, that number might still change as I have more children, but the point here is that having a kid is a lot of work, and I know that we know this, people say it all the time, but I also feel like social media can kind of, well, definitely can over glamorize parenthood, motherhood, and make it look easier than it is. You know, you have 4 kids and they're just like bouncing around you and you're just going with the flow, and I'm sure that's the reality for some people. But since having Brooke, having one child to take care of, and a child that is relatively good, like he's been pretty easy overall, but he was still a baby and he's still a toddler right now, and no matter how good they are, it's still a lot of work. So I'm just feeling like, do I want 4 kids, or maybe 2 sounds better? So that's one mindset. The other mindset that changed is the ideal time to have kids. I never really understood why people wanted to wait till later in life to have kids, like in your 30s. Because like a lot of people say, if you have your kids in your 30s, then they're gonna be leaving your house when you're like in your 50s. And do you wanna have that responsibility at that time of life? If you have kids earlier, then you get your life back earlier. And there's definitely arguments for both, but I'm definitely seeing more the appeal of having kids in your 30s. I'm 26, so it's not like I'm in my early 20s, but either way, I always thought it was best to have them earlier. And I think that came from, again, the false representation of motherhood sometimes, where you can have kids in your 20s and still live your life in your 20s, and then you get to have your freedom later in life, like I said. But I don't think it's realistic to say that you can have the same life with kids versus without. And it's not like people are directly saying that, but that mindset of, oh, just the kids tag along with you and you just live your life. I went into it thinking that, and yes, to a certain degree you can, but you are very limited in a lot of aspects of your life with children. So I just see the appeal more now of spending your 20s doing whatever you want and then having kids in your 30s. Not to say that I would do that if I started over, but I just like see the appeal now, you know. The third mindset I changed was on the right way to parent. I think I've also mentioned this before, but it's not like I intentionally thought there's only one way to parent, but being who I am, I like to research a lot of stuff before getting into it. So I did a lot of research on children before having one, and just the way books are written, blog posts are written, they direct you towards the idea that their way is the only way that's gonna work, and that's fair enough. So I kind of took on that bias unintentionally, and after having a kid and seeing the way my kid functions versus other people's kids, it's just become so clear that like there's a million different ways to parent, and to say that there's only one way to parent is, I think, just insensitive to the other moms who can't use that way, if that makes sense. The fourth mindset that has changed, I've kind of touched on this already, but it's the idea of adapting your child to your life. This was something I was really holding on to as my like saving grace for surviving motherhood, is that I'm gonna bring my kid along with my life and they're just gonna have to adjust to it. And like I said, you can do that to a certain extent, but it's impossible to fully live your life like you don't have a kid. Especially in the early days with like a newborn, a young baby, you can bring them anywhere at any time. It's super chill. But when your kid is older and maybe struggling with naps a little bit, then you want to prioritize their naps. And also after you have your own kid, you like want to prioritize things for your kids as opposed to just yourself. Like you want to give them things that make them happy, that kind of thing. A mindset that I really didn't think would change is on discipline. I did a little bit of research onto discipline before having a kid. I knew it was a little far away, like I needed to deal with the newborn stage first, but I wanted to be a little prepared about discipline because I was very scared of the toddler years, which are scary. And the thing that I've changed my mind on is avoiding discipline. So I read a lot about offering other options or distracting your child to avoid tantrums. So like if your kid is playing with something that they're not allowed to play with, give them another toy to play with so that they don't get upset about it and they just play with that new toy. And there's nothing really wrong with that, but after having my own kid and doing some more research on it, I learned that you're really missing out on an opportunity to teach discipline when you try and avoid those tantrums. So if I keep avoiding conflict, then when there's an opportunity where I can't actually avoid it, I'm gonna have a harder time teaching the discipline to Rook because we missed out on those early age kind of entry-level discipline moments to teach him kind of the way things go, how it works in this household, you know? So yeah, I'm trying to not avoid discipline, but also not make conflict where there doesn't need to be conflict. Okay, the next thing I've changed my mind on is that I don't really feel the need to have a girl anymore. Like a lot of women, I always liked the idea of having a little girl, a little mini-me, wearing matching outfits and everything. But I don't know, I just love being a boy mom. And I also love the idea of having two boys that like get into trouble together. So if I'm only having two kids, potentially, I'd be so down to just have two boys. Not to say I don't want a girl, obviously, but I just don't feel the need to have one. I'm sure it would be fun, but that's where I'm at right now. Next up is about feeding your kid. I put a lot of pressure on myself to, well, everyone does, I think, to like, you know, provide the best for your children and specifically provide the best diet for my child. I did a little bit of looking into baby-led weaning before having a kid, and I knew that I wanted to give my kid the most diverse diet so that they don't get picky, because picky eaters are difficult to deal with, right? And I still, you know, try, but I have totally let go of the pressure of a perfect diet, especially when I myself don't eat a perfect diet. How am I supposed to put that on my child? And not to say that I'm just throwing my diet and his diet out the window, but I just try and feed him what I'm eating. I try and eat relatively healthy, but sometimes we have mac and cheese and there's no judgment there. That's just the way it is. Sometimes he just has blueberries for breakfast because that's all he wants to eat. And I feel like as long as he's eating something, then we're good. Next up, something I thought about even before wanting children was that I would hate the child stage. I've always loved babies, so cute little babies, but I was also very nervous for when kids start having opinions and talking and becoming their own people. And Rook isn't really there yet, but now I am so excited for it. Like, the newborn phase, the baby time was all fine and dandy, but these are the years that are, I think, going to be the hardest, but like the best, because you're actually forming your child into a person. They're not just a blob on the ground. And now that he's starting to like understand when I say stuff and I can see him learn and growing his personality, it's just so cool. And I think it's just different when it's your own child, obviously, right? Versus another kid. I don't care about other people's children. I only care about other people's babies. Don't take that to heart if I know you. I like your children. And last up, I really did not think that I would get past being grossed out by children. I've mentioned this before, I do not do well with mucus or snot. It's just like, I get very nauseous even thinking about it. So like the Frida nose sucker has never entered my house. I cannot handle that. And now that I have my own kid, I couldn't care less about Rook's snot. Like, I'll wipe his nose, no problem. I don't do anything weird, but like, I just don't care about him being gross. Like, spitting everywhere, poop everywhere. It just doesn't faze me, and I guess that maybe should have been expected, but I really am triggered by mucus, so I'm very surprised that it doesn't bother me when it's Rook's. Like, even Josh's mucus, friggin' get that out of here, I cannot deal. But Rook's mucus, totally fine. So on that lovely note, those are all the mindsets that I have changed since actually becoming a mom. I hope this was insightful for you. Like I said, if you're becoming a mother, that kind of thing. Let me know if you guys have any mindsets of your own that have changed. I'd love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.